So welcome to this webinar. My name is Peter Koch. I'm a security evangelist at Conscia, Denmark, and I'll be your host for this 45-minute seminar on how to structure and prioritize the security controls through the use of the CIS control framework. Supporting me is Michael Rowland from Systemair. So you'll meet him at the end of this seminar, bringing some practical viewpoints to having worked with this assessment and how they have been doing. So let's start with the agenda. Let's see here. So this is the agenda I'll take you through. A little bit on why we are here, who we are, what we do, and how we do it. A bit on status and trends in the current threat landscape. Define controls against cyber attacks in a structured and prioritized way, which is basically the main focal point of CIS. Why the CIS controls? We need that question very often. Why do we use CIS controls? We are talking ISO or NIST or COBIT or other frameworks. So I think that is a good answer. Then I'll talk a little bit about the updates. So CIS has been going through several updates, but the last one, moving from version 7.1 to 8, is actually a major change and an update, which is worthwhile digging into. And Systemair will come with their customer perspective on the security journey. And last but not least, a little bit on how to get started on this journey and question and answer. So that will be the agenda for today. A little bit personal intro or background. So I've been working in security for the last 7 years, mainly focusing on 2 areas. One is basically teaching customers or preaching customers how to structure their approach to building a good security infrastructure, prioritized. And the other one is really around detect and response services, how to build a strong capability in detecting things when adversaries has passed through the controls that you have built. Before that, I've been at HP for several years and have a background as a Bachelor of Science of Electrical Engineering and diploma in IT and economics. So a bit on what we do. So this is actually the reason why we are here. We are seeing an escalation of attacks, and not only an escalation of attacks, we also see an escalation of the consequences of the attack. I think the best example is actually looking at ransomware development. 4 or 5 years ago, it was a nuisance. It started to be a little bit of a pain every time an employee had a hard disk encrypted, but we learned to live with it. And we learned to fix the issue of single PC ransomware. Moving forward 2 years, the adversaries have been developing their tactics and their techniques. So they are not only going for the individual PCs, they're going for the company now at a significantly higher cost, hence also the risk. So we see that almost every day in the newspaper. Large corporations being taken down by ransomware groups. And these attacks are nowhere ordinary attacks. They are planned. They are following a process. They're using very advanced techniques. Some of those techniques they have borrowed from some of the nation state actors operating espionage. Whose main purpose is actually to get in without being seen. So they have now found their way down into this cyber criminal adversaries. So we see a escalation on that point. We also see rising cost of cyber. I read recently also the IBM cost of data breach report, where the average cost now is $4.2 million cost due to data breach. And if you're running a risk or doing your risk assessment, if you know that this is actually a valid number, you should basically have to put aside money every year to pay for that that risk. So we are seeing an increased cost of data breaches, and data breaches or cyber breaches consist of maybe a few very large breaches, but it also consists of a large number of small breaches. PC being breached has to be re-imaged, lost time, and so forth. So if you count everything from the minor incidents to the larger incidents, it all sums up to a significant risk increase during the last 4 or 5 years. So that's also why it has hit the radar screens of the boards in many large corporations. So this is why cybersecurity is important. You have to mitigate that risk much more focused than you used to. Who we are, Conscia Group is a group of well-established company in each of the countries of Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Netherlands, Germany, and Slovakia, consisting of 800 people, network of knowledge. So we have managed to build a very strong network of knowledge, so our customers have access to this network. We use that heavily to spread our knowledge internally, but also to deliver high caliber solutions building and support and infrastructure services to our customers. We are operating out of 5 pillars. One is data center and cloud. Then we have cybersecurity, which is the focal point for today's discussion. To do collaboration, advanced networking, and last but not least, software development as well. This is actually what we do. We are growing healthy and profitable, and forecast to continue that down that road. So what we do is really to minimize our customers' risk or cyber risk, protecting the digital business value creation and creating a competitive advantage. We see a lot of companies are talking digitalization right now. Our main focus on the cybersecurity is really to protect that value being created. We do see customers travel the road down the digitalization without thinking about security. We do also see customers moving rapidly into the cloud without giving any thought to cyber security, and hence the cyber risk they get. So what we really do is to reduce that risk. This could be the situation before you have a certain probability, of loss, you have a very, very, very small probability of the very, very big loss. But on the day-to-day, you will experience typically this curve of explaining your risk. One note is that this curve is moving, so we do see losses going up, and we do see probabilities of loss going up. So our job is actually to keep that risk down, and this is basically the purpose of today. How can you do this in a structured way by using the CIS control framework? I would like to refer to Sun Tzu. I think a lot of people know him, old Chinese warlord, but some of these quotes are actually relevant in today's cyber war. And I picked this one out because I felt that this is actually hitting on some of the issues I see today with a lot of companies trying to implement some kind of security. First of all, they're not always doing it structured. They're basing it on what they used to do. But they're still missing some very important parts of the puzzle to actually build a strong defense against adversaries. So if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. This webinar, I'll actually focus on that sentence. The rest is actually about you. If you don't focus on that, you will lose somehow. But let me focus on the first 3 sentences. So taking the threat landscape right now, it is becoming massively complex. If we take the lower part of the drawing, it pretty much shows how did we used to do it. We have a firewall separating the trusted zone, as we call it, our networks from the externals, which is by default then untrusted. We do see at a lot of customers that they use macro segmentation on the internal network, meaning that they only have one segment. So they have everything on a segment. They have printers, they have web cameras, they have building controls, they have handhelds, portables, desktops. They even have their servers sitting on the same segment without any protection because they have a firewall separating the external from the internal. And some companies, they even have a very critical components, operational technology components or SCADA ICS components, where they are controlling a physical world, which can be very damaging if anything goes wrong. We even see companies that don't have a firewall in between, so they even have those very sort of company critical components sitting on the same network, making them an easy target for an adversary who wants to gain access and close down the operation. Then we've seen a trend that people are then trying to protect their networks, but while protecting their networks, they are rapidly moving all their data into the cloud and the applications without thinking about security. So they basically just changed the attack surface from their own to the cloud. And we have met customers who believe that when they move into Azure, Microsoft will handle the security. And same goes for Amazon, which is not true. That's also why those cloud providers, they have stated that this is a shared responsibility. They're actually very clear in outlining what is their responsibility and what is the customer's responsibility. But we do see a lot of customers who haven't read the shared responsibility model tend to believe that Microsoft will take care of everything. So this is a new attack surface, and I guess a lot of the participants in this webinar are already in the cloud somehow. So they are by default a potential target with the cloud services. And then we might have even bigger corporations who not only have a network, they have several networks or branches spread around either the country or region or worldwide. And basically it's the same recipe. We have a firewall separating the branch. Sometimes we do see customers who short circuit the firewall and have an MPLS line between the branches and directly to the main office. So if they are breached in a branch, like the Ukrainian NotPetya attack we saw some 4 years ago, hitting some of the very large companies, where the malware could basically move laterally internally because of the MPLS network. So this is a situation we often see. At the same time, we do see that the attack mechanisms or the tactics and techniques used by adversaries is becoming more complex. They are moving from spreading traditional malware to using methods where they don't use malware at all. They use standard Windows programs. They just use it in a evil way. So we do see more and more attacks that are more stealthy in nature, which makes it even more difficult for the customers to protect themselves. So no doubt that this is not going to change, and it's most likely going to grow further. So the risk will be growing, and also the consequence, or the probability and the consequence will be growing in an even more complex setup than we maybe see today. So this is basically what we stand in front and need to protect ourselves against. So how do we do it? As part of the structured process, I think it's important to start with a common ground and a structured approach through well-established frameworks. And they are different to choose from, and they play a different role in establishing a structured security framework. I have mentioned ISO 27001 and 002. We have NIST with their directive, and we have, as we're going to talk about a little bit further here, CIS control framework. What you also do is inspirational meetings and talks and assessments to figure out how are you actually doing today? How does the infrastructure look? How does the threat landscape look? Is the threat landscape for a specific customer different from another customer? And yes, they are. If we look at the different groups that are operating, they are attacking different segments or industries or public sector services or so forth. So we do see some who specialize in the oil industry. We do see some adversaries focusing on the government sector industry. That's mostly espionage. And then we do see specific cyber criminal groups that are targeting basically everybody who wants to pay. But they tend to go for those who have the biggest pockets to pay. We talk about where are you today, what to improve to lower risk, and then plan do. And last but not least, we do have the security experts to help set it up, support it, and even run it if that is needed. The last one is, especially the last one of helping supporting customers in running it is becoming more and more relevant, given the fact that worldwide they are lacking close to 4 million security experts. And security is not something you set up and then it runs by itself. It is something you set up and continuously tune to the changes in the threat landscape, the changes in the threats itself, tactics, the techniques that the adversaries use. So this is not something you just set up. We have seen customers setting up a firewall initially when it was purchased, and then they didn't touch it for 4 years until they renewed. During that time, a lot of things happened, and basically that's with an increased risk if you don't do anything. So how can we help you on security? We have a lot of experience for more than 500 solutions, so we have more or less tested and tried and implemented most of the common security solutions you see today, even on very large scale. We have a dedicated focus combined with the best technology partners. So we don't do every firewall vendor, we don't do every endpoint vendor. We have selected what we believe is best of the best technology partners to solve the problem. And we have built the competencies around those partners. You can always buy a cheap firewall and set it up, but setting up a firewall the right way might actually be a very complex process. So we tend to tie those things together, and that's also why we limit the scope of technology partners. We need to be very good at what we do with those technology partners that we have chosen. Then we focus on security with a very strong network foundation. Since network is the sort of the transport mechanism for all attacks, it's a good way to start building secure networks and then focusing on the additional controls on top of that. And we praise ourselves by having some of the best consultants in the industry and our own cyber defense team. We are focusing on building the secure infrastructure. So we are not heavily engaged in board meetings around corporate-wide risk assessments and so forth. Our main purpose is actually to build a secure infrastructure. That's also reason for the technology choices, but also for the way that we train our to deliver that. How we do it? We build very much on the CIS controls. We also build on NIST because it is a broader-based control framework. But what we have found is that the CIS control is a very good manuscript for building security controls. It's a script that operations people tend to like and understand very much, which makes security move from the, I wouldn't say the more theoretic part of security, but tying together the theoretic part of security controls to the practical part. And that's also what we see at customers who tend to both maybe have ISO and then they use CIS to have the more practical perspective or manuscript for building the right controls. On top of that, we have 3 pillars, you might say. One is really building the security into the networks. A lot of the network stuff we sell today includes a lot of the controls that is actually prescribed in CIS security controls, but often we do see customers not turning them on. So our job is actually to make sure that it is an active choice from customer if they want to turn it on. Otherwise, we see it as a natural thing to build it into the network. Then we lean very much up against Zero Trust. Zero Trust has been on a long journey since 2010, but we do see a growing interest and also a growing number of Zero Trust projects now, because it has really been building support, but also proof of its effectiveness in stopping most of the modern attacks. I'll come back to that a little bit later with statistics. So we do also see a lot of companies selling product where they put the Zero Trust stamp on, and we do see customers buying those products and thinking that now I have Zero Trust. But Zero Trust is much more than buying a product, and I haven't seen one single product who can fulfill the ground principle of Zero Trust. So you need to do more, but you need to understand the most important stuff. Zero Trust is not to make your infrastructure trusted. It is actually to eliminate the thought of trust in everything you do. So it's a behavior-based, it's a strategy more than it's a control framework. And then we sell our managed security service. We sell our monitoring service, detection response services to assist customers in detecting if despite the controls they have built, if anybody is moving on the inside of the network, then we are there to help them detect it and improve their controls further, see what gaps are left and so forth. So this is our main focus. A little bit on why CIS. So CIS is a non-profit organization that really gets its input from a lot of a very large community of private and public organizations. And some of those organizations are organizations like the NSA, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Defense, other large public organizations, as well as very large private organizations. So what they feed into CIS is really what they see day to day. This is also why we see CIS change over time, because it is really reflecting the changes in what's happening in the cybersecurity or the cyber criminal market. Who is attacking us? How are they attacking us? Should we change our priorities? If you take NIST or ISO, there are no priorities. And fundamentally, it's not that their controls are changing that much. But with CIS, it's basically an ongoing change of prioritization, ongoing change of controls that reflects the changes of the adversaries. So this is one big difference. The other thing is that it's really given in a what they call non-actionable recommendations for cybersecurity that is easily understood by IT personnel. And this is really a big difference from the other frameworks, that this can actually be implemented. We do and have seen a lot of companies who've been going through an ISO certification, and they're nowhere near more secure than before the certification. But with CIS, there's a tendency that people end up being more secure because they're implementing these controls. So this is why CIS. All information about CIS and the controls and how it's used is publicly available on their homepage, easy to spot. If you just type in CIS controls, you'll probably end on the Center for Internet Security's homepage and scout through it. One note is, besides the CIS controls, they also publish what they call the CIS benchmarks, which are basically setups for a long range of security devices, how to set it up properly. So it goes both for firewalls, switches. It also goes for Windows, how to set up Windows 10 the right, secure way. And as such, you can probably, Microsoft have similar documents saying this is the way to set it up securely, but CIS has received probably more appraisal of their CIS benchmark from a security perspective being better than Microsoft's. Microsoft still tend to look at how easy is it to use Windows, and if we do too much security, then the user will basically oppose it. So where CIS really looks at security. So if you want to harden your environment, CIS benchmarks is actually a very good manuscript for hardening your endpoints, your servers, your SQL servers, your firewalls, and other types of equipment you have on the network. So that is also available. So the CIS controls, version 8. Previously, they were most often referred to as CIS 20, because there were 20 controls. Now they're only 18, and it's not called. I have also heard people saying, it's CIS 18, but it's not CIS 18. It is the CIS controls, and it's version 8. Tomorrow there might be 17 controls, or there might be 21. We don't know, but version 8 is one, and then the CIS controls. So it's more a matter of say we use the CIS controls, and we live with the controls, and we adapt to the changes in controls. But overall, we implement CIS controls. They spread across different topics. So some of the controls is very much about identifying what you have on their network. Other controls are really to protect what you have on the network. Other controls, again, is really to check what you have or detect what's coming in. And yet other, again, is really around response. So they cover different fields where they map up against the NIST frameworks, similar thing. But otherwise, these are the 18 controls as they see today. So how to work with CIS? So coming back to Sun Tzu and his quote, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the results of 100 battles. So looking at those, if you take the first one, it's really about identifying. You can't protect what you can't see or don't know you have. So all security starts with visibility or identification of what you have. And CIS, as mentioned here, those controls includes a proportion of identification. Some of them is all about identification, and some of them have sub-controls or safeguards that really deals with identifying stuff. So important to know, you need to know what you have to protect it. That is fundamental. Then you need to know the enemy. You cannot go to a fight without knowing the enemy and what weapons to choose. So that is fundamental to cybersecurity. We need to know who the enemy are and how they're doing stuff to really protect. Otherwise, we'll basically be running blindfolded around, and we'll stay with a sort of, we need a firewall, we need some antivirus, and we need somebody else. And tomorrow there will be some sales rep coming by your door saying, I have the new greatest who can stop everything, but you don't know what to stop. So you don't know what questions to ask, what the product really should do to you. So knowing the enemy would be the good start of the journey to say, okay, how do we really protect ourselves? If you know how attackers operate, then it's easier to protect with the CIS controls. So that should be the normal journey to really sit down and plan and say, okay, we need to be able to identify what we have. And then we need to be able to identify how the opponents are operating. And then we can actually protect ourselves. And as an example, there's a lot of names of different adversaries, and some of you might have heard about the ransomware group called REvil, R-Evil, or whatever, however it's said. But actually, the name of the adversaries, as they're called in Mitra, is Gold Southfield. It's really a group that are operating a ransomware as a service. They provide the whole back infrastructure. They have developed the tactics and the techniques, and now are selling it through a ransomware as a service platform, where they basically recruit affiliates who does the job for them of penetrating and then basically deploying this ransomware as a service. Lately, REvil has been attacked by FBI and Microsoft in common. Their operations are now starting to close down. Most likely somebody else will take over. This group has also been known lately for cheating on their affiliates. So their business partners who's basically trying to sort of place their ransomware and earn their part of the share has been cheated, which has made them more unpopular. And of course, from a business perspective, has made it more difficult for them to make more ransomware business. But if you dig into MITRE ATT&CK, and all information here is publicly available, you can go to the MITRE ATT&CK, MITRE organization homepage, and you can basically find the information there. And if I go to that and look up Gold Southfield, there's a small description of who they are, but what they also describe is really what are the tactics and techniques that they use to get in, execute, create persistence, and so forth to succeed in their endeavor customers. So the techniques that are marked with blue is basically describing how they do it. So it's not just planning a piece of malware. They actually do more than that. So you can go in and look that up. You can also find other groups responsible for different attacks. Some of the Russian groups that are operating more like in the espionage, saying like APT 29 or 28 or Strong Beer or Strontium or whatever they're called, you can find basically a layout of how do they operate in the market. And you'll, as a side note, you'll most often see that when doing the initial access, they use spear phishing. So mail is by far the most dominant attack vector getting into the organization. So you can take this technique mapping and put it through the syscontrols attack navigator mapping. So if you do that, say, okay, I want to protect myself against Southfield or REvil ransomware group, you basically take these techniques, put them into the syscontrols, and will tell you what to do to stop that. As you can see, I blinded from 5 to 18, but there are several more controls that somehow has an influence on your ability to stop those attacks. It's not just one thing you need to do to stop it. It is multiple steps that you need to do to actually stop it. So this is a way to practically turn what you know about your attackers, how they move, what tools they use, into how should I stop them. So basically a prescription of how to stop those. So depending on what industry you're operating in, whether it's a public sector, government sector, aerospace, defense, whatever, you can also pick out those adversaries operating in those segments, because that jump has been done through threat intelligence research and so forth. So they know where these guys are operating. So if you were to plan your defense mechanisms, you would probably start by looking at those who most likely is going to attack you, instead of starting with the ones that are not going to attack you, because they're also those guys. So this is a part of the structured approach. And especially if you want to protect against the ransomware, you could use MITRE to look for those ransomware groups, and there are several operating on different names, and compile sort of the sum of tactics and techniques they use, put it through the same mapping, and then you basically end up with a list of what should you be doing to protect yourself against ransomware. I'm saying this because we do see ransomware as the single biggest risk right now from a financial perspective, due to the operating model. In many ways, first of all, they steal your PII data if they can, and then they encrypt it, so you're hit twice. So it's relevant to include that in the discussion. If you are in certain segments of the industry, you would be looking at other groups who are doing cyber espionage, so basically trying to steal your information somehow. And those are also listed. So this is the way you practically can work with syscontrol. So instead of implementing all all 18 controls with 153 safeguards, you could be more targeted in what you do. Is this an easy job? You will find out if you do the exercise yourself that is definitely not easy, because there are some cyber hygiene things you need to do. And I see a lot of companies failing in doing that. As an example, if you take number 4.1, establish and maintain a secure configuration process for enterprise assets. I see very, very few customers who are actually managing their configurations in a secure way. So that's just to start. So a little bit on CIS version 7.1 to CIS version 8. From 20 controls to 18, from 171 sub-controls to 153 safeguards, from basic cyber hygiene being controls 1 to 6 to implementation group, IG1 being basic cyber hygiene. There's more focus on remote worker and service providers. Remote worker because of the corona, and service providers because everybody's moving to the cloud, which is a service provider. So you need to have a set of controls to manage how are you going to deal with the fact that your data is not in your data center, it's somebody else's. Then there's a major reorganization of controls reflecting changes to threats and attack vectors, more focus on data protection, account management, and access controls. And that actually reflects a major adoption of zero trust approach to controls and priorities. So especially data protection, account management, and access control are a focal ground principle of zero trust. This can actually be demonstrated by insurance companies and insurance claims. Of course, every time there's a claim against an insurance company, they start their investigation to figure out how did this happen and so forth. And there's now this is taken out of CIS number 7, but you can see that the CIS number 13 is CIS number 3, which is data protection. CIS number 6 is actually around access control. And CIS number 5 is about account management. So you can see exactly those controls is actually the most frequently attacked areas when it comes to data breaches. So it really gives me that they are now moving from 13, 14, and 16 to 3, 5, and 6. This is actually shown here how they're moving around. But as I see this is really a major change in how you should build your cybersecurity from previously. See such things like continuous vulnerability management, who has been sort of say, hey, you need to run continuous vulnerability management. But looking at the statistics, it actually has come up with that it's more frequently the issue with insecure configurations that gives adversaries access to a network, and not the use of software. So that's why the secure configuration has moved up from number 5 and number 7. This is major change. The change before, if we go from 6 to 7, it was minor changes, but this is a big change, and most companies should really revisit their CIS control and their security roadmap to see how is this reflected in what, because this is reflecting changes in the attack landscape. Again, coming back to IBM's cost of data breach and looking at zero trust. Zero trust is built on the control framework. It's a strategy, but it's still some of the ground principles are based on the control framework. I'll show you that in a little. But if you look at the risk reduction, if you have a good zero trust strategy and implement that, that alone will reduce the risk by 50%. So it is it's one of those security strategies that actually gives food for a large risk reduction. So this is the ground principles of zero trust, designed from the inside out. It is stated several times within the CIS controls that you need to start from the inside out. It starts with data protection, which is your sort of the inside and not necessarily your perimeter. If we map out this against the CIS, you can see this alignment between CIS controls and zero trust. So if you apply a zero trust strategy, it lives very well together with the CIS controls as well, just as an example. I think I'll hand it over to Michael now for a more sort of customer-oriented approach, how they did this and what outcome they have had from working with this CIS assessment and using the CIS controls.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So hello everyone. My name is Michael Roland, and I'm the IT manager at Systemair. I previously worked with our network and our security suite, so I come a bit from that background as well. So we are, just so you have some background on what type of company we are a manufacturing company. That's the dark blue countries is where we have production, and the green ones are where we have sales companies. So we're a global company that exists in basically every corner of the world. We have quite a central IT department, which is located here in Western Europe, but we support the whole organization. Just so a quick side note, we are about 6,500 employees, somewhere around there. We have we have a turnover of about 850 to 900 million euros a year. So if you can jump to the next one.
Yes.
So how we got into this CIS 20 work that we did was we had a long partnership together with Conscia, primarily on the network side, but we also had some security softwares and things like that with them. And we started discussing on what should we do? How do we improve our security? How do we move forward? How do we do the correct things? Where should we do the investments? So we got the offer to do a CIS 20 security review, which would also show us a bit where we were in comparison to other companies in our size and industry. So a bit of why we wanted to do it. If you go to the next slide. Yep. So we wanted to know really, where are we today? Where are we good? Where are we bad? We done a lot of different things in security, but we didn't really have a good overview of what we should prioritize. Had we done the right things? Was there something big we were missing completely? Because it's easy to get blind on, you get stuck on the certain things that you work with daily, and then you do them. So we wanted to take a new approach and really get a new strategy and focus on our work, so we knew where to put our energy. And also as a help for us in the IT department for our investments for the coming years, where in the security world do we need to put our investments to get the most money for our time, effort, and money. And we were also facing lots of changes in how people were working. We went from having about 300 daily VPN users, for example, to have about 2,000 people that used VPN every day. So we also had to consider that not as many people were in the office every single day. So how do we approach that comparatively to if they're at home or in a cafe, or if they're more on the move? So that was a bit why we wanted to do it. So it was quite easy to get or to do. We had first a short meeting where they presented what CIS 20 was. We sent over our policies that we had, what we thought was relevant. beforehand, so they looked through it, so they had some ideas of where to ask additional questions, or if we needed to clarify some things. And then it took about 1 day. So it was primarily me that sat with them for a day. So it was me together with 2 or 3 people from Conscia. And then we invited some people from my organization throughout the day when we're going through, for example, the backup. I took in someone from our department, or our people that primarily work with that, just so I didn't miss anything with what I said. And then we got some follow-up questions while they were writing the report via email. And that was the time investment that was needed from start to us getting the report. But of course, we had the report, we had to do something with it. So the results of the whole thing, you go to next, was that we got partly an executive summary, which was great for our CIO to present to our board of directors and our management. It was something they were really asking for as well. So they were very happy that they had something that was very simplified for them, so they could realize that we were in a quite good state, but there were still investments needed. What focus areas did we have? And then they also know what to follow up on, that we're getting better, or that we might need more investments in certain areas. So we could see our areas of need. Here we had really a list, and then we afterwards, when we got this list or this report, we really sat down together with Conscia and our consultant from there and did sort of a priority list. There is some priorities in the report, but we really went through and say, okay, what can we do easily? I mean, we might have the tools, but we haven't configured them to do this exact thing. Okay, we can do that easily. Where do we need to maybe bring in a new tool to match up with the need that's needed to have a secure environment? So we did sort of a prioritization list and did a sequence of work that we needed to do, which was good for us. Then we had some concrete working points. But we also got sort of, where are we good? What are we doing correctly? It's also nice to get that confirmation that we are doing these investments and it is correct in a modern solution for security. But we also had some policies that were maybe outdated. So, for example, we had a password policy that no one had touched in several years. Everyone just, okay, we'll continue using that. It was an okay secure password policy, but it might be something, or we had some things there that we changed after this. So this is really, it was really helpful to give us the sort of affirmation and task list to what to focus on. And now it's a process of implementing these, and then maybe in a year or two we will do this again and see, okay, what has changed? What do we need to do again? What did we do correctly? So that was really helpful for us, and it gave us a starting point and something to discuss around to find out, to get a better focus on the security work.
Yes.
I think that's it for me. Unless there are questions.
Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Peter.
I'll go back and basically start how to get started. So the way we do it, we have set up a process. It's a workshop process. Typically, we have an initial meeting with a customer, 1.5 hours, where we discuss intro, expectations, scope, resources that should be available for this, and setting the expectation. Then we do a workshop meeting with customer, typical 8 hours, it really depends on the availability of the right people and the size of the company. But what we most often see is that 8 hours is actually doable for very large companies, because it is a few people that we need to talk to who have responsibility for data center, who have responsibility for network, security, platforms, client. So if they are available, it is doable to keep it in 8 hours. Then we do an assessment of results. So we basically go home. We start looking at the answers of this 153 times 4 questions that we go through different scales to assess what is the current situation. And we do see customers who before this assessment tend to believe they are in a good shape. And after this process, they recognize that they were not in such a good shape. And those are the customers who are likely to going to be targets for ransomware, because they thought they were good and they were not good. So this is a structured process that basically enables the customer to be more objective on understanding security. Do I actually have the right controls and so forth? Then we come with a conclusion on current security maturity. So security maturity is more than just looking at how many controls have been implemented. We also look at policies. We look at reporting on the controls. We look at the degree of automation, and then on the controls itself and where it has actually been implemented. So it's a good current situation snapshot of where are we on this maturity score. Then we actually give suggestions for improvement. And it's not that we take, if let's say you have you're given 153 answers, and then for every answer you say this is red, yellow, blue, green, and so forth, because you will end up with a working list that won't make any improvements. So we tend to boil it down to a few focus area that we know will benefit the overall security, recognizing that you cannot move from whatever level you are at and to the highest level within a short period of time. So really a matter of where do I get most security bang for the buck given the current situation. So that usually ends up with 3 to 5 recommended actions or projects on how to build more security. Then we also look at your prevention and detection capability versus the attack kill chain, as we discussed previously. So where are you? Both before and current situation, and then afterwards, if you do and the improvements, how will your capabilities to prevent and detect be after that, so you can see the result. Then we do a reporting workshop, which is typically 1.5 hours. Feedback from customers is pricing is very competitive to what we see from the traditional players like Deloitte or PwC or others that do this. So this is part of the reporting, maturity level aggregate score across policies, controls, 1 to 6. The reason we have broken out controls 1 to 6 is that we consider them highly prioritized. We also look at all controls, and if all controls have been automated, or to what degree you're doing automation, and then how you're reporting on the controls. And find very, very few companies who are actually reporting on the controls. My saying is then, how do you know where you are if you don't report on it, and how do we measure improvement on your controls? Then we look at the percentage of the basic controls, so implementation group 1, which is basic cyber hygiene. Where are you on what you should be doing regardless of your size? Then we look at the implementation percentage by control on the overall controls framework. And then we look at the risk addressed and the risk accepted such. So this is part of the reporting. Then of course we are describing what are you doing good, and where is actually improvement needed, and why is that improvement needed. So you get we put some words to what we actually see from the statistics that you can interpret, but also which top management can stand and look at. Then we look at before picture. This is part of the reporting. This is control number 1. How did that look? For this customer, it didn't look that good. And then we look at it after implementing some of the recommended controls. We also recognize that nobody can be perfect and have everything in green. That is almost impossible. So that is why prioritization is so important. Then we look at the capabilities, preventative and detective capabilities before, as is, and after. So that's basically part of the reporting. Typically, our recommendation to improve reporting is actually to adopt the assessment tool, because now you have done you have filled it out with where you are. So it's a natural choice to basically adopt that tool and start working with the tool. So if you do changes to the infrastructure, implement new controls, you actually update the tool. So you have an ongoing reporting capability as well. You're getting inside. So this is our recommendation. Then you basically fulfill the reporting capability. So that's how we actually do it. Pretty easy, pretty much down to earth. What we tend to praise ourselves with is that we have a pretty good infrastructure knowledge, so we can maybe better than most couple the technology skills and understanding with the security controls, and use that information during the interview to really facilitate the questioning, but also challenge you on your answers, knowing what technologies there are and what they can do. And I often meet, when I do it with customers, they say, yes, we have this on the endpoint. Then say, okay, so how does it actually work? How does it work compared to the actual controls? And then they figure out, no, we haven't really done it that way. Okay, then you don't have the control. So that type of challenge is important to get a better picture of where are you actually. We have done a white paper on security and the CIS controls, guide for implementation and prioritization of security controls. You can get it on the website mentioned here. So for inspiration of how to work with the CIS controls. So I don't know if the mics are open, otherwise there are questions. Time for questions, if there are any.
We had gotten 2 questions in the chat.
Yes, perfect.
So I think both of them so far, at least that I've seen, were to me. One of them we've answered already, but it's how much time did Michael and the others at the customer have to devote to CIS controls?
Yeah. Yes.
So I think in total it was maybe about 12 to 16 hours, something around there. If we talk about getting all the material and send it over, and then the preparation meeting, and then it's one workshop day, and then it was some follow-up meetings, an hour or 2 apiece, where we had certain discussions. So about 16 hours I would count completely on man hours from our side. So then I count the people that I had to bring into the meeting during the workshop to answer specific questions that maybe I didn't have the answer. And then we had another question, how the report was received by management. Did it lead to investments or measures? It was received very well. They were happy to see some of the things that we had recently done an investment on, but we hadn't started the implementation. And of course, then it was still red in the report. And there, they got a bit of confirmation that it was the right investments. We had also earlier in the year asked for bigger investments in the cybersecurity training. We were doing the internal one. And also there we had some homework to do, and we had asked for it, and then they also got it then from another source that, okay, this is something that will actually help quite a lot for our users. So it was received well, and it helped with the investment suggestions that we had done, and it gave them the confirmation that what we were doing in the security work was quite good anyway. So since we got the comparison to other companies, we were a bit over the average. So it was quite good.
those were the questions on the chat.
Yes, so far at least.
Yeah, I haven't seen. There's only one who chatted that he will leave, which is okay. A bit over time. If there's no more question, I would like to thank you from my side, and thank you, Michael, for your participation and giving it a more practical customer perspective.
Thank you for the presentation. It was nice hearing the news about the new CIS, since we did the previous one as well. So that's good to see.
Yeah, perfect. Great.
Okay.
Yeah. Then have a nice day to you all, and hope you will find your way back and contact. I have on the, I think the presentation will be sent out. There's no copyright here, and there are contacts available for you to grab out to have a further discussion, which is more sort of focused on your business. Okay.
Yep. Perfect.
Have a nice day.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Bye.